Welcome back to our summer Bible study on the book of Philippians. So we're continuing on with the beginning of this letter. We're still in the first chapter, but we've already had Paul share about his situation of being in prison, about his love for this congregation. And now we're going to get into a little bit of some of Paul's concerns while he's here, and yet even in these concerns, there's an overriding hope. So today we're going to do 15 through 18, the first half of 18. So Paul writes, "Some proclaim Christ from envy and rivalry, but others from goodwill. These proclaim Christ out of love, knowing that I have been put here for the defense of the gospel. Others proclaim Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, but intending to increase my suffering in my imprisonment. But what does it matter? Just this, that Christ is proclaimed in every way, whether out of false motives or true. And in that, I rejoice." So one of the things that we know about Paul's ministry, because we have several of his letters, is that he encountered a lot of opposition from those who were already parts of the church, from those outside the church, and sometimes the opposition that he receives from inside the church. And I'm talking about the church as a whole. So there were different opinions in this early church. Was this early church going to be just an extension of Judaism? To where these Gentiles who are now being grafted onto this community of Christ, which is a part of the community of Israel, are they going to have to adopt all the practices of Israel? So the dietary restrictions, circumcision, wearing certain types of clothing, things like that. Are they going to have to do that, or are they going to be different? And Paul has argued for, a freedom from all those restrictions. But many people have even come into communities that Paul has founded and tried to pull them into the other way. And so I think that's what Paul's talking about here, with some proclaiming Christ from envy and rivalry, of some coming in and causing trouble in communities that he's founded, and yet others doing it from goodwill. But that trust and that hope that even in the midst of these things, and it would be great if the church always agreed on every single thing, but that's not the reality in Paul's day, and it's not been the reality of my experience of church. But Paul's saying, even in the midst of these struggles inside the church, whether they're doing it out of envy or rivalry, or whether they're doing it out of goodwill and love, that Christ is still being proclaimed, and that somehow God is at work in this, and God's kingdom is continuing to advance as this gospel is being shared. And some may be doing the work that they do to cause me strife while I'm in prison. And if that's why they're doing it for the wrong reason. But it's that trust that God's Spirit can still be active in this, that God can still be at work in this, and even in the midst of those times of division, that God can still be at work. Now, we don't have evidence that this division is going on in Philippi. This may well just be an inclusion of Paul's own experience with the church, of his wrestling with some of his own woundedness, of some of the ways in which others have tried to come in and change his proclamation of the gospel. But yet Paul continues to rejoice. One of the things we'll hear later in the book of Philippians, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say, rejoice. Paul is rejoicing even though he's in prison. He's rejoicing about this community. He's rejoicing that God's will is being done. He's rejoicing that the gospel is spreading, and that he's a part of that. And so are we. I'll see you tomorrow.